Do you like conversation on a variety of topics? Feel like no one wants to talk about the things that interest you? Tired of only hearing the same political, sports, or catastrophe talk? Yeah, we feel that way too. Join two high-functioning geeks as they discuss just about anything under the sun. We can't tell you what we'll be talking about each week because we don't know where our brains will take us. It will be an interesting conversation though, so hang on and join us. Here comes the relentless geekery.
Brought to you by Mind Architecture. Building worlds for your mind.
Good morning, Alan.
Good morning. All right. Finally abandoned the fall theme. I know we still have plans to head down south and catch some fall leaves down maybe, I don't know as far as Hocking Hills, but at least there's a bunch of good state parks, Furnace Run and Salt Lick. I always love the names of state parks because they're odd and memorable. You know what I mean? So, all right.
So yeah, we're like a week away from Thanksgiving. How crazy is that?
We just had a brothers and sisters dinners with Colleen's family, and one of the big discussions, of course, was, so who's making what for Thanksgiving? And because they've been doing this all their life, it really isn't much of a discussion. It really is, sure, I'm in on potatoes, I'm in on salad. The hostess always is the one that makes the turkey. It used to be that it was, as I've laughed about before, bring out the first turkey because they had such a big gathering. But now that everybody's growing up, having kids, getting their own family traditions started and stuff like that, now 30 is down to 10. And so there isn't quite the need for overwhelm. But what's funny is people haven't really broke that habit. So the groaning board of side dishes and stuff like that is still enough to feed 30, which now one of the good habits of the family, maybe yours does this too, is someone gets those little styrofoam containers, and at the end of the meal, everybody goes through and grabs whatever they want left over of the green bean casserole, of the good stuffing, of lots of turkey and stuff like that. And one of Colleen's and my joy is we always get the carcass. It used to be carcasses, but she makes fantastic turkey soup, and that's just so important to it, is you got to get that guy, boil him down, get all the good meat off of him and stuff like that, and then by her throwing in all kinds of good veggies, it just makes the heartiest, most like warming soup. So when we go off for one of our hikes, it's great to come home and have a big old bowl of soup with maybe some fresh bread out of the bread machine and stuff like that. I've always loved that Thanksgiving is not just one thing, but all the after. There's so many good leftovers that we still have many meals based on plates and stuff.
Christmas Eve growing up was always down at my grandmother's, and New Year's Day was at my great-grandmother's. And that changed. And my kids did get to do some of that when they were really little, but they don't remember it a lot. And then it became just us here. And then with Gina and her kids, it was a big deal for a couple years. But now it's just like Thanksgiving. It's not too many of us. And actually, when the kids were younger, because I had them one Thanksgiving and not the next, we started doing Thanksgiving on Saturday when I would get them. So they always invited friends. So those were some of the best Thanksgivings because they all had a ton of friends come. And that was when my friends could come, and relatives who had other family would say, oh yeah, we can come Saturday, just not Thursday. So I'm like, why don't we just do Thanksgiving on Saturday and forget Thursday? We'll spend Thursday with games and movies, and Saturday will be Thanksgiving. We might do, we're probably not going to do it this year because going to a show for the soap next year, we might plan on it and see.
Got it. Another thing I've always liked is our family always had Thanksgivings. We'd bring my grandfather and uncle and so forth to House Baltus. But then when my parents moved away, and we all moved away, there was a diaspora, if that's how you say it, of all of us going to Ohio and Indiana and Florida and California and stuff. Because people knew, especially after my parting from She Who Must Not Be Named, they knew that I was a solo act, and I guess they pictured me at the gas station getting some little roller fries full of turkey or something like that. So I was invited. H and Kathy had me down to Carmel, Indiana one year, and it's Carmel, not Carmel, because that's what every state does, is take the better known one, and you have to differentiate yourself from. We had a couple of Mensa groups. Verlin and Dunn Alberton in Chicago would have like the Orphans Thanksgiving. People like me who just, their families had fled the scene, but they were still around. And that was really wonderful, more like the real tradition of Thanksgiving, where it wasn't just gathering a family, it was everybody in the village, everybody that, it was just so nice to celebrate this lots of food. What are you thankful for with people that you don't necessarily know? And sometimes a family thing is also like, you revert to the role you were when you were 10. And there's sometimes tensions with the crazy uncle or something like that. But those kinds of things were just so much wonderful conversation. I didn't know what to expect. Great gaming. The people that were so generous to open their house up to a couple dozen people of all races, creeds, colors, religions, hat sizes. It was really fun. And I'm going to like a New Year's Day party with friends that I had made through a thing I did called LifeSpring. And it just was so much like getting outside of family and doing true fellowship. I really loved it. We'd have lots of great conversation and watch a movie or two together. And everybody would, when you are doing a potluck like that, everybody has like maybe New Year's traditions that they'd bring. Oh, this is what my family always had. So again,
Right.
you have just this incredible array of food. And I have, some people have really tough holidays where they really are alone and it isn't easy. You know what I mean? The holidays can be a time of depression or of solitude. And I guess if solitude means you're thinking of what are you going to do with your new year or that kind of thing. But I never wanted to be the Mad Magazine long ago had, so what are you doing for your birthday? I think I'll stick a candle in a cupcake and have a good cry. Maybe that was National Lampoon because it sounds a little dark for Mad. But I've always been blessed to have friends that thought of me, or if like I just mentioned, hey, parents out of town don't know what I'm going to do, maybe go see a couple movies at the empty movie theater, because who goes out to movies on Thanksgiving Day? And yet I have, like I said, been blessed by folks that included me in, and forever, thank you, Scott and Lori Miller. Thank you, H and Kathy Huseman, the people that have been so decent to me for Christmas or Thanksgiving or other things to make sure that I wasn't just in the dark.
Right. So speaking of movies, we saw the Marvels, you saw the Marvels, and I know there's been a lot of negativity about it, that this isn't a great movie. It's bombing, it's failing, it's horror, blah, blah, blah. What do you think?
I thought it was solid. And
I loved it.
It's not in my, I don't know, whatever the top 10 of, because it had great battle scenes, because it had great humor. It had elements of all of those things. And you and I have talked about this. I hate that the most things now, the way that they give a review is disappointing financial results, only made 50 million. Oh my God, is the MCU over? It's like, how about not waiting until the third paragraph before you talk about how good the movie was or not?
Right.
It's very weird to have that really, I don't know, ugly side of the business. I know, of course, movies have to make money to be able to make another movie. And I like it when my favorites, when comic book movies broke out of being in the background and a lot of people started to enjoy them, I was like, hey, everybody, I'm glad you're finally seeing what's so cool about the mythology of comic books. And the fact that some of those early ones really they captured just the right people to play Tony Stark, to play the Black Widow, whoever else it might be. So I was heartened by that, but things are so mercenary nowadays. And they're compared between, you name it, between past movies from the MCU, between this weekend in particular. Hey, it's the second worst performing, as if I couldn't care less about it's the second weekend of November or whatever it happened to be. It's like they decide whether they're going to attack it or like it, and then find reasons to do, which is so much part of America now. I've already come to my conclusion. Now I'll look for supporting facts and dismiss all the rest.
Yeah.
And having said that, I don't want to talk about only the financials, because why did I like the movie? It has great banter. You know what I mean? There's three principal characters, that each of the Marvels, if you will, Captain Marvel and Professor Marvel, who they don't know how to refer to Photon and other incarnations that she's had, Monica Rambeau, and Ms. Marvel. And even that's funny because she's not even a Ms. yet, right? She's like a teenager. But it's got wonderful things about not generational conflict, but generational sharing or generational misunderstanding, because some of the vocabulary is different. And what gets people excited, if you're a fangirl and you're about to go into battle with Captain Marvel, one of the first things you're going to do is say, I've always loved you. I have your posters on my wall. You know what I mean?
Like, great.
That's like as if Captain Marvel is Taylor Swift or whatever else it might be. So I really love that they spent time making the dialogue. Each of the characters really sounds like who they are. One is a battle-hardened veteran. One is an enthusiastic teenager. One is an academic and a professional that she's been drawn into the superhero life, not because she always wanted to be a biff bam pow person, but because she got these powers, and like, how are you going to use them responsibly? some of the battle scenes are great. You know what I mean? When not only are they showing hey,
Switching.
they're flying, but people learning how to fly. It's not
Yeah.
an immediate thing that you'd like launch yourself from the ground and immediately be an expert in aeronautics. You'd be one of those plummeting birds from the cliff where you better learn to fly pretty quick or you're going to bounce down. Anyway, I thought the weakest point of the
Oh,
movie.
it was just Carol. That was the best line when they were falling, and they're all like, "Oh my gosh!" And then Carol Danvers hits the ground, and Fury goes, "Oh, it's just Carol." Me and Colin were laughing out loud at so many of these things in the theater. There's a lot of great Marvel. There's a lot of funny things in Marvel, but this one actually we laughed out loud because it just struck us as so funny.
That's a great way to put when you know someone is like incredibly powerful, a fall's not going to be whatever it does. Maybe them being in the heart of a sun or something like
Right.
that. The ability to reignite a sun. I don't mean to give any spoiler alerts. It was a good exploration of their powers and of how comfortable they are using them. A lot different actually of Miss Marvel in the comic books versus the hard light powers that she shows in the movie and I think in the TV series are a big variation, like a Green Lantern variation of where she
Right.
much more affects her own physiology, big fists, and how she can control her body as opposed to controlling the outside world, if you will. So I'm hardly a comic book purist, but that was one of the big things that's different than what I had gotten used to from reading in comic books. They did show, I love that they have, the world is multicultural nowadays. And so showing her family and how like the mother is rules the roost. You know what I mean? She has, of course, no powers except she's the mom, and she's used to saying, "Now you be careful out there," even while her daughter is going to fight space baddies. And that one thing I thought, and then I read with even more reinforcement, is Nick Fury's role here and his stuff with the secret invasion. It explains why Secret Invasion, which we both didn't much like, is as it is. That maybe it's all like the Two Towers, the middle book in the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Right.
It's all preparation for the final battle, but there's not much there in that episode itself. So Secret Invasion is, well, there are Skrulls on Earth, and they do indeed have a war going on with the Kree, and here's how they might have infiltrated. But and maybe it also suffers the same thing that I thought the biggest problem with the Marvels, and maybe you thought this too, was I've gotten used to having a good villain. A lot of the way you see a good hero is because they're up against a good villain, and not because they're more bestial and more. It's like there has to be understandable motivation, and has to be that maybe they do chew a little bit of scenery, but they have to be that there's really danger here, or there's really tragedy here, or whatever. That's such a characteristic of Marvel villains, is they're rounded characters. And I thought, unfortunately, that the lead Kree enforcer was like a paper cutout instead of. I could see why she's really bereft without her planet, that there's an ecological disaster, that she's worried about how she has to go after the Skrulls because she thinks they caused it, or she's going to at least steal from them I got that wrong. It's not the Skrulls that caused it. It's the Annihilator. It's Captain Marvel when she killed the Supreme Intelligence. And I don't think I'm doing spoiler alerts here because that was in the first movie, that if you watch Captain Marvel. So I guess it's a good thing to be able to show consequences. One of the good things of the Marvel Universe is it isn't just a series of episodic things like DC was often accused of besides Marvel, is that there's like a reset button and the episodes don't tie together, whereas there's almost always a very good through line in the Marvel things where what you did has consequences. You know what I mean? If someone dies, they're really missed. Or if you really offended someone, they might come back to haunt you, as now the villain is even more obsessed with you. So I didn't get that. I didn't get it. She was, I can't even remember her name, Darvan or something.
Darvan.
Darvan.
Yeah.
What a sad thing. I hardly ever don't remember those kinds of things. She didn't make a Thanos-like impression on Ultron, where immediately you remember the villain name, because a lot of times they also choose the name that really is, the mouthfeel is that it is villainous, that it is of a race or something like that. And instead, she was just a cipher. So I wish it would have been better in that regard.
So I thought the movie was really pretty good. We enjoyed it. And I think part of other people's problem is it's okay. We had Endgame. We had this huge battle. We had and so everything has to be better than that.
Marvel fatigue instead of.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it doesn't. No, it's not going to be. I said this about Guardians 3. I said it was great. It wasn't world changing. It was one person in their group that was the thing they were all fighting for. And that made it different. This, I do agree at the beginning, it was a little muddied, and they got into it so quick that you were like trying to catch up and figure out what was going on. And I think it could have been a little clearer as to what the motivations were and why this was all happening. But other than that, the only change I said, and this is personal, is they put the parents on the space station with Fury, but really it was unnecessary. My one change would have been that when all the Flurgles or whatever they are, the cats started
Flurkins.
Flurkins,
I did remember that one exactly.
So that Fury was not like upset or afraid and wanting to stay away from him, which I would have been like, that doesn't seem right. He lost an eye, and the kind of the opposition. I think he should have been more like wanting to stay away from him. I think the mother should have been the one to realize, hey, let these Flurkins eat everybody and we can transport them better. And that would have made more sense for the characters and why they were on the space station. And we would have got the same results. That just a little personal thing. But overall, the movie was solid. Is it the best movie storyline ever? No, but it was better than most people say.
One thing I really liked about it was that it didn't have, like you said, maybe they threw them in the early that you're unsure what's going on, but I actually like movies that respect your intelligence, that you will catch on. Oh, when they keep using the word entangled, where do I most often hear that in science? Quantum entanglement. That's spooky action at a distance. Things can have an influence on each other, no matter space and time, if you will, because that's how quantum weirdness works. And so the way that they portrayed that, also the special effects of instant bodies changing in space, you know what I mean, that when they both use their powers at the same time. And we really do have to put a little spoilers alert warning on our when we post this, because we have talking about things that they're important to the movie, and there might be a little bit surprising Flurkin wise and stuff like that. But it was for instance good to see that at first they're really like, what the hell's going on, and they're really weirded out by it. And then because they're tacticians and smart, they get to say, we could actually use this to be able to do like triple team a villain where they don't know who's coming at them with what power and all that kind of stuff, and them showing that quick body swapping and how it gives them an amazing advantage of being that unpredictable. That was very well done. And the special effects showing that little bit of, I don't know, blur, shimmer, whatever the transpositions are, it really wasn't clunky like old-time special effects would have looked. It actually looked like there was some kind of energy transfer going on, and that somebody knew it happened in that space. I don't remember whether it had a noise. I think it did, because Marvel's really good about that this power beam sounds like this, and this impact of a hammer sounds like that. I think that there was a cool whatever. Maybe I'm making it up. Maybe
a little sizzle.
So I hear a little sizzle. Exactly. Because you think that there's displaced air. They're not all exactly the same mass, size, shape, etc. So there would be some kind of compensation going on in the physical world for you're putting a bigger peg into the hole that something else just came out of, or vice versa. That was very effective.
The training montage was very good, because they were like, okay, let's really figure this out so we can do this and switch intelligently. And it wasn't just the Rocky where they're getting strong. They were juggling and trying to switch while juggling and carrying books on their head. And I thought that was cool because it's different. And I know there are people out there, that was stupid. You're the same people always saying that's boring because it's been done 200 times. They didn't do. And I know there are people that are like, what's with this stupid singing language? That's ridiculous. But it's different. And it made it lighthearted, and their reactions is great. And then the guy started speaking and he's bilingual. Oh my gosh, that's so funny to think of.
As many of the throwaway funny lines, that it wasn't a big setup for a joke and stuff like that. It was just the wit came out from the interactions between the characters very naturally, instead of it being, okay, here's where we pause the tension with a bit of humor. There's, I don't know, it's like battlefield humor. You know what I mean? You have to relieve the tension somehow. And I really liked a lot of those things. That's going to have the quotable quotes list from this one is going to be fun. And that kind of thing.
And Kamala. Now, I know I also saw a lot of people saying, oh, they shouldn't have TV characters go into the movies and that's giving us too much, that they don't fit. It doesn't work. Are you freaking kidding me? I thought Kamala was fantastic. She was my favorite character when they were on the singing, and she's walking and dancing. And
she immediately got into it instead of too mature for that or something like that.
I thought she was great.
this is funny. There's lots being, so this movie has aspects of the multiverse once again, that there's not only Earth 616 and the according universe of that, but also it's weird. Marvel already has its multiverse because it is the comic books versus the TV shows versus the movies. And I got to say, take out the verses. They have indeed integrated so that the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has lots of things that roll over into, even if that Nick Fury was not the featured performer, it was Clark Gregg. But I really like that they aren't just throwing things together and having it not make sense. They really
Right.
try to bring in aspects of Maria Hill is like a through line, same as Agent Coulson, and that when they show like who are the big science heads, that they'll bring in some of the same people that aren't really, they don't figure into this movie. But if you're talking about who would be examining a visitor from another universe, it might be the brightest of the X-Men. Oops, spoiler alert once again. You know what I mean? So it's cool to see that they didn't just say the X-Men can finally appear because we figured out the contracts with Sony, that it's actually a big part of what's
Yeah.
going on, is that if you tear a rift in the universe and then someone goes through, and what are they going to find on the other side? Are they going to find a duplicate of them? Are they going to find an evil variation, the soap opera evil twin thing? I love that we're in phase 5 of the Marvel universe or something like that.
So yeah, somewhere between
Like,
4 and 5.
I love that they keep, just like Marvel Comics have always done, they plant seeds. They don't immediately say, let's rush to whatever the next thing is. I think I mentioned one of my favorite things ever, like an issue of the Avengers, maybe 103 or something like that, had a Sentinel grabbing Vision and going, analysis indicates an android of 5 decades vintage. And wait a minute, the Mad Thinker just created him like 2 years ago, and they left that unresolved, that reference unresolved, 30 more issues, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it was. And I love the fact that someone really has the brilliance to come up with that, and then the patience to let it work its way out. And there's got to be a big board at Marvel Central that has, don't forget that at one point we talked about the Red Room, and so now we have to have some references in Black Widow's history or the White Widow or whatever's coming. There's all these things. Of course, there'd have to be, if you're going to have a Green Lantern, it's Roy G. Biv. There's not only green. How are we going to introduce? Someone had those great ideas, and then to see them well executed is a joy. It's not, I don't know, for the Metal Men, there's more than 7 metals. What would happen with, I can go on with all the plot lines that have occurred to me. Did I ever tell you this? One of my favorites? Storm has been much pursued, much impressive to all kinds of people in the Marvel universe, and not all of them good. And so what would it have been like to have like a bachelor competition between Dracula and Doctor Doom and T'Challa and all those kind of things, that the ways of romance are not always clear. They're not always good evil, if you will. And what would she have done if she was getting like really pursued by, maybe pleased by, a really powerful guy's attention, a really witty guy's attention, even if it's not her usual crowd of friends? Tell me that's not screaming from, why do people in, you name it, in schools, you go out with someone from another high school, oh my God, it's like you started a gang war. No, I just thought he was cute. I thought she was interesting. Like I said, one day when someone does that plot line, and they already have, Storm has had multiple romantic interests, but not some of the ones that I just named. I like the fact that the multiverse hasn't just been, now we can do anything and not have it make sense. I really like the fact that they're still, in many ways, taking their time and planting the seeds and letting people think about what could that mean and where is this going and who's going to be involved in that.
Right.
Then if they execute it, it's very satisfying to say, that's what I thought was going to happen, but I didn't get it all because they also brought in AIM or something. You know what I mean? Like, I've always loved that about comic books.
You mentioned the multiverse and the one secret surprise at the end, which wasn't a huge surprise. We knew that was coming somewhere. But if you remember back to WandaVision, they used the different Peter, what's his name? Lightning guy. What's her name?
Pietro, right?
Pietro, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, they used the other one from the X-Men First Class, and you're like, why do you look different? And that was wonderful. And if you're not up on it, then you're like, why are they talking about that? But not after credits, that other scene they always seem to throw in, that was the most exciting. Colin just about flipped out of his seat watching that. And I love both those characters. And I love what they're hinting that's coming for the next set there. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm in, because those two characters from their shows was fantastic. I love them both.
Exactly. And in fact, that's, I hope, another thing. It's funny, I don't always mean to diss the DC universe, but in my mind, that was always the big comparator, was that shared, tied together. You really do have interactions between the various different heroes and villains and stuff like that. And Marvel has always been great about that. And honestly, is there anything that has ever made people stay to the end of the movie more than Marvel's end scenes? From the very first Avengers movie where Nick Fury shows up, and actually
That was Iron Man.
Iron Man, exactly.
Or no, Ross in the bar with Hulk.
Okay, you want to take my car. We're going to put together a thing, the Avengers Initiative or whatever. And that, again, just laid so much anticipation and what's going on, and that the world is bigger than the episode, the tiny little bit that we just saw. They have been very smart about that. And this time I was surprised they didn't have even another one all the way at the end, because the history has been not that little cutscene in the middle of credits. It's that you have to wait all the way to the end, and everybody's like collecting their coats and popcorn boxes and stuff. And then, but I think that's the most I've ever seen. There's always been people that want to see who was the gaffer in the key grip and all the other special effectsy type things. But the fact that there's story, and in fact, the first time when you walked out of a movie and then your friends told you, oh, you shouldn't have left because they had more. And I was like, wait, what? I didn't want to miss a minute of
Which,
anything.
to be fair, they didn't invent that. There have been movies in the past. Ferris Bueller is probably the more famous one from decades ago.
The singing in the shower is that exactly.
That was the one. That was the one where after the credits, he goes, "Hi, are you still here? What are you doing here? The credits are done.
Right.
Leave.
Go home.
Go
Exactly.
home." Yeah,
You're right. I mixed between the fact that was still like an additional. Sometimes they'll have blooper reels. If you've seen any Jackie Chan movie that they have playing over the credits or after the credits, all the ways in which he got hurt during the filming and stuff like that. He really is an amazing athlete, but not invulnerable. And so sometimes I know I'm jumping all over. What always amazes me is he broke his ankle there. He just wrapped it up, put on a boot that looks like a gym shoe, and then continued to do those incredible acrobatics that every time I always give a total respect, homage to the Carrie Strugs of the world, who in the Olympics had hurt herself and yet did a running down the thing, total vault, coming down maybe partly on that bad foot. Who's that brave? Who else has that incredible self-control that they can overcome their pain and their fear and still do what they've trained their body to do? It isn't just Carrie, it's Jackie Chan. You know what I mean? That there's people that really have gotten messed up and they're like, but we need to get one more cut. Didn't Harrison Ford, Tom
Cruise,
all kinds of people in the course and action movies, you'd think that's got to happen all the time. And you don't just rub it out and go on. Sometimes you break a bone and then maybe as people get older, they have to take a break from filming. But sometimes people have just said, we need another take. Everything's set up. I'm going to fucking play through my pain and it's just amazing people can do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I also saw that Stephen King did a tweet about the movie, and he said, you know what? Look, I don't care about Marvel movies. I don't care about superhero movies. I haven't watched any of these. I could care less. But what is wrong with all you people that are getting joyous that it's falling apart, that you're destroying it, that you want it to fail, that he's just shut up and move on. Let the people enjoy it. I'm just like, good for Stephen King. If you're going to talk about anybody who's had some crappy movies, he's got tons of them. But he's always had the attitudes, look, I wrote the books. If you enjoy it, great. If they make a good movie, good for them. If you enjoy the movie, good or bad, good for you.
Yeah, I got paid no matter what.
Yeah. So it's cool that he's going in and saying, all you people that are trying to destroy this and bring it down and you're celebrating because it's failing. Shut up, go away. I'm like, good for you. Thank you.
I agree. The armchair quarterbacking of people like looking for, I only go to a race to see a car crash. That's very weird to have it being applied to silly movies and stuff like that now. I for a long time, 20 years plus, read Entertainment Weekly when it really covered all the various different things, much like you and I try to do from our geeky perspective. And he wrote a column for that for 5 years running. Maybe it was 3. And one of the things I loved about it was he showed the depth and breadth of just how familiar he was with everything about literature, everything about movies, everything about the craft of writing. He really was like the friend whose recommendation you would listen to as to why you see or not see a movie. And the way he expressed it was just very well written, very understandable. He definitely had opinions and would share them. You know what I mean? So
Right.
just not another blah columnist. He really absolutely was one of the highlights of that magazine while he was doing it and it was coming out. I really miss it. It's no longer being published. I think there's a website and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, okay.
I-
And hey, sorry about this. I need to take a little bit of a break.
Sure,
I think
break.
caffeine-
Okay,
I'll be
no
back
problem.
in a minute.
Take a
Thank
break.
you. Okay.
Hey, that worked out well because while we were talking, the vet called. My dog is in getting her eye. She had an ulcer in her eye. Something probably got scratched underneath. And boxers are really bad about getting eye sores and then they don't heal. So we've been dealing with this for a little over a month and she's had a cone on. She can't scratch it, giving her drops, and it healed a little bit and then it didn't progress. And they did a few things trying to get it to progress and just mess with it. So she went in this morning for not surgery, but whatever you would call it, some technique. They use a needle and try and break it up and they give it some blood injection. But while we were here, they called. I'm like, okay, as soon as I'm done, I'll find out what they wanted. Turns out she's doing okay and it looks better. So they didn't even do the thing they were going to do, which is good because that was like $500. So I'm like, oh, good. Yeah. So that was like, cool.
Veterinarians, every veterinarian has like a patient that can't talk to them. You know what I mean? They
Right.
really have to learn from, I don't know, doggy expression or obviously how the thing itself presents itself. What am I going to do? And are they really in pain? And I don't know, dogs, you can't tell the dog, okay, stay really still. The dog kind of has automatic reactions about flinching away and anything
Right.
that pains it tries. So that's off to veterinarians when they can take care of something as sensitive as an eyeball and not be really
Right.
scary close to.
And we've always tried to take care of the animals and take them into the vet for checkups and if something was wrong, try and do it because we took on that responsibility. I can't stand the people that get an animal and then like just tie it up outside and ignore it. There's so many things. Never take it to the vet and the animal's suffering. Cassie is old. She is 13 and boxers rarely live to be this old. And that's one of the problems with the eye too. They don't heal well in boxers, which is part of our problem. But when we took her in there, she having pain. I'm like, I don't think so. They're like, a lot of dogs this age get arthritis and stuff. And I'm like, she seems okay. So we started giving her this medicine for pain, joint pain. And suddenly she's perked up a bit and running around outside. I'm like, oh, now I feel bad because maybe she was in pain and I didn't know it, but she acted okay. She wasn't whining. She was maybe a little lethargic. She would walk around and wag her tail and have a good time outside. But now she's like a puppy again. She's playing.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm like,
Isn't that
okay.
wonderful that, yeah.
Yeah. Good vet. Redstown vet has been a very good vet, very pleased with them. And it's not the first vet we've had over the last 20 some years. And I'm just really happy with them. And they're so close.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I did the same as you for both Shotzi and Fenris. I always make sure that they had their yearly checkups and handle things. And whenever I noticed anything, took care of it. That's one of the things they talk about, how dogs, like, they'll jump in the car when they think they're going out to take a big run in the fields. But if you have a bad vet experience, and they get skittish about the car. And I remember Shotzi at one point, we had to give her a whole bunch of nice experiences to make up for. And this is terrible to talk about. Sometimes doggies drag their little paws on the rug, and what's going on there? Apparently, she had a thing where they've got glands near their anus that is out one of the places in which they have scent or put scent, pilotonidal glands, if I remember right. And sometimes they get blocked or over full, and they actually have to give them a squeeze to express them. And if you're looking for something where the dog is going to give you a look of indignation of what the hell, what are you doing back there? That was the thing that made Shotzi unhappy with the vet, because up until then she had been really, even when she got a shot, when they had to shave a little spot and all that kind of stuff, she was always very wonderfully mannered. But that must have been just uncomfortable enough that she was like, let's not go back there. Let's not go back to where they won't leave my fuzzy little popo alone. So,
Cassie loves car rides.
I haven't thought of that in 30 years. Good Lord.
Cassie loves car rides and she gets excited to go into the vet because she sees all sorts of other animals. She was excited, jumped in the car, got to the vet. She was excited going in. She's looking around and pulling, wanting to go. And then the lady came out and took the leash from me and started to walk back. Cassie went, nope. And it wasn't because she didn't want to go back because shots and things like that. She never has a problem. It was just because I wasn't going back. She is so attached to me and she gets so anxious anymore when I'm not around that I had to walk to the door and she's oh, okay, and went back. And then she was probably like, hey, what the hell? Where'd you go? So,
you know, I used to, even with Fenris, I used to be out of town for my occasional mental weekends or whatever like that. And the one time that I had to kennel her, because I couldn't find someone to come over and take care and so forth, she got like kennel cough. It was exactly the bad experience you don't want from putting her in a kennel. And I remember like my walking in and her like where they run so fast that they're scraping the little guys on the waxed floor. She was just like that. So I never did that again. I actually had a pet sitter lady that would come over and take care, feed her, walk her, that kind of stuff. And in one case, that's why I'm embarrassed. I cannot remember her name, but maybe it'll come to me. Fenris had, I used to give them horse hooves as a chew thing because they, just like a nylabone,
right.
They crack, they shave. And so most of the time they go from lots down to nothing and you don't worry about complications, if you will. This little clown swallowed a big enough piece that it then wouldn't pass. And it was hurting him and he expressed himself to her. She took him to the vet. They actually had to cut him open, cut his stomach open, get this thing out. I think it was stomach versus intestines. I think it wouldn't pass not out of his little last opening, but I think it couldn't pass into the intestinal tract. And so she saved him. You know what I mean? And hats off to the veteran. The veterinarian did a great job. And he did indeed have the cone of shame, just like your wonderful boxer had for a while. And he couldn't get used to it. He kept catching it on the side of the counter.
Yes, she's horrible.
Exactly. But what was funny is, as what they told me was, he's foolish. And he really, the minute that the cone came off, he kept licking. And I think that already the stitches were out. But what they said was, it itches him so much that he'll pull his own stitches out. And it looked like we waited just the right amount of time because indeed he would have done that. That's such an irritant to them, that a little weird adventure to make sure that my doggie was okay. But even with stitches in, even with the cone on, when I came home, he like stood up, Dad, you're home. And buddy, don't pull anything. Don't. And I don't know, dogs are just amazingly, if they can, like you're saying, maybe your guy, when it was hurting him a little bit, he just didn't run as fast. He favored one leg or whatever it might be. But now that it doesn't hurt, his little doggy brain goes, let's go run. And then I can run as farther than I ever have. And I'm happy. Another quick story. This week, I thought that mange was something like from the 1880s. You know what I mean? When you taught you mangy. Well, that was something you said to insult a guy in the Old West. My dog got sarcoptic mange at some point. It's tiny little parasites that are incredibly itchy. And they really, I noticed right away that he had something going on because he wasn't that little, where they bite and like down to where fur was being removed. And he's a fuzzy beast. So when you see a bald patch on him, what's going on? Luckily, they know how to treat it. They give him a big dip and they have to do it more than once so that they kill not only the things, but the eggs they might have laid and stuff like that. But forever after, it's like, I never thought in my life that I'd have to say I once had a mangy dog. You know what I mean? I really thought that was something that just, as long as you have your flea collars on and all that kind of stuff. But no, I had a mangy dog for whatever that month and had to get him. And then I'm like, okay, buddy, I want to cuddle you, but I'm not going to cuddle you where I'm going to get mangy. We had a strained relationship of all the usual. I was very cuddly and hands-on with my pooches, and I had to just steer clear while that stuff was acting. Anyway, mangy. I had a mangy dog. Come on.
So we were talking about Marvels. Let's keep on Marvel. Loki just recently ended. And
exactly.
Fantastic show.
They what a great character arc that they really did things from him having been such an evil villain, like the telling humanity that you will always kneel scene in one of the,
very first Avengers.
Just what an Eric SOB, you know what I mean? He really was the god of evil, the god of mischief. And they've done great things where maybe that's sometimes what happens with villains is that you get a worse villain like a Kang, where part of what they are is they can't stand to be dominated by anybody else. And so he has to at least stop that. And just as he He developed loyalties to other people. He like, if this is going to be my universe, I'm going to fight for my universe. I'm not going to let it get splintered into, and I'm glad they did that, because Hiddleston's range is so good that he shouldn't always just be leering, smirking evil. They showed very good things going on here. And all the variations that we've laughed about, the alligator Loki and all that stuff, he played a very good new version of himself, if you will.
And the show has been so good. And if you look at it, the very first episode and the very last episode had the same title. So they were tying it all together.
I did not realize that. Good observation. That's cool. Okay.
Yeah. And it was just very well done. Again, it was very self-contained. So if you don't see it, you're not missing a whole lot, except maybe a few Kang things. And it really was saving the universe even more than with Thanos, but it was done on such a way that you couldn't tell with the rest. It was different. And the characters were so great. Owen Wilson and Ke-Huy Quan, who was Short Round.
Mobius and Ouroboros. Exactly. They honestly, I love when the Thomas Hearns and Simon Greens, they have great naming of characters to where it's like a really memorable, and it really portrays them. You immediately know something about them just by their name. And indeed, Ouroboros and Mobius are both like that versions of infinity, if you will. The snake swallowing its own tail that it returns on itself. They did a really good job with that. And one of the wonderful things about the series was that they had all kinds of, let's see how to say this, they took their time showing things like that it isn't always the biggest punch that wins, that sometimes it's persistence. You know what I mean? If you've got an infinite amount of time to solve a problem, the thing is, keep going. When you're going through hell, keep going. Keep trying new things. Know that you have to solve this problem, and no matter how many setbacks you get, you're like, then try this, or go faster, or do. And so that one episode where they really were showing all the ways in which they were going to conquer, how do you get the time funnel to not branch out infinitely but actually focus back down, was very well done, but hardly conventional superhero stuff. That's like seeing the Manhattan Project about we must conquer this, you know what I mean, technically, if you will. So I really love that. A lot of people, again, I sound a little bit like, hey, I went to my literature class. There were good story arcs for a lot of people where they changed, they grew, they learned, they got worse or better. That some people didn't handle the pressure well and had to check out of being like the person that's on the line doing this. And other people stepped up. And other people were just like, I don't feel any pressure because I'm on the spectrum and all I like is solving puzzles. I'll solve your puzzle. You know what I mean? They had really good portrayals of what is it to be such a galactic level narcissist that you really have to be in charge, and that if you can't win, you'll outlast them, he who remains, or whatever else it might be. And all the sacrifices you're willing to make, usually of others, in order to get your goal. I don't know. We both have narcissists in our lives that once in a while we're like, does nobody else see this? This person's crazy. They're willing to do anything. Like, this is the dark triad, like made flesh. What? Really? Nobody else sees this? Or they see it and they say, I love that. He seems strong. She seems like she's the person that should be involved in this. So
that's a whole discussion. but yeah, Loki, it was so much fun. And what's his name that plays Lively, Kang? I know there were people complaining about his character in the show because of the way he talked. And it's okay, if you're going to have an unlimited number of variations, that you want to distinguish them. You don't want them all talking, acting the same. And he did such a fantastic job of making this character unique and separate. And I think, yes, the speech patterns could annoy some people, but why? So there are people with different speech patterns. And
wait until the next episode and he'll be a different version of himself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If you've had to listen and a lot of work stuff with people from other countries, if they're speaking English, there's some halting, there's some words mixed up. You deal with it, you move on. But I thought he did such a good job with this character, and people want to complain about it. Like we said with the Marvels, just shut up. Go watch My Little Pony or something if you're that upset.
Honestly, this is meant to be dismissive. When you hear those kinds of complaints like, hey, how come English isn't not only the only language in the United States, but let's enforce that by law. I've just learned a lot more about you than I have about anything having to do with that situation of people being bilingual, of people immigrating in and having to take a while, ESL-wise, to learn the language. That immediate separation, and that if it's different, it's bad, it's wrong, it's less. There's such a mental flaw there of that they don't appreciate. Not like diversity is such a loaded term. They don't appreciate difference. You know what I mean? Wow, I want to hear every kind of bird cry. I want to see every color. I want to, like, I embrace that not everybody speaks the same. Not everybody walks the same. Like, one of the cool things about mimics is that they are perceptive and skilled at being able, he didn't just talk like Johnny Carson. He had those little things where Johnny would play with his pen, or you know what I
Right.
mean? Characteristic type things. And I really, the fact that people are that uncurious to be like, what that's a word I've not heard before, because it's like a Cajun English composite. I love learning those things instead of that's funny talk and get him. Like I said, you learn a lot more about people that are that
Same,
tiny siloed
same
in
reason
what they
people didn't
think
like
is
Jar.
exactly. And I'll hear hop soapbox time for those who like. It's very weird to have people talk about cultural appropriation, because I really think that there's skill, craft to being able to sound like a person of another neighborhood, another community, another race, another anything, and that you're not stealing from them. You're not stopping a person getting that role. I'm pretty sure that they had auditions and they decided that the person that's best going to play this is like, there's too many examples. If you're supposed to have an Asian American character, you don't want it to be Mickey Rooney, where it was so broad that it really was insulting. But it really is okay to have someone, I don't know, why there's a minefield here. I don't want to say the wrong example but I
Right.
admired craft. Like, this is funny. Whenever they have role exchange movies where boom, the magic lamp makes it so that a father and his son, or and then there's the different jargon that goes with kids versus adults,
Right.
or it's not always same sex, that it's suddenly people, and once in a while they do it like Steve Martin and Lily Tomlin in All of Me, if I remember right. They do it so like perfectly broadly that you're not insulted by him finding this thing that is how women walk, or that she wouldn't be aware that after a guy uses the urinal, you have to like give it a shake. You know what I mean? I know I really went into the gutter there, but those were just it isn't the gutter. It's okay to have experiences that are not exactly shared, and that if you were trying to fake it, you really might overdo it because you haven't lived in that body with that, you name it, that voice, that musculature, that balance, all the things that go into what makes a person. I think that you can still come across as, are you demure or loud? All those things. And they're not, if anything, the people that say they shouldn't be allowed to allow, because you really are saying that all Asians are the same and that there's only one way to be Asian, and that person, because they didn't give your stereotype version of the Asian, that somehow they're wrong, they're mocking it. I find that every time that people talk about what's wrong between, if you will, the races, it's more, there's more variation within each race than there is at all between the races. And so, and there isn't any real variation. It's like breeds of dogs
Yeah.
versus that there's really three different races of man. Nope. We are all Homo sapiens, not Homo superior, because that's left for the X-Men. I like it. It doesn't take even science to say that I'm learning more about you than I am about that situation by what you think that there's only one way to be, an ideal, an exact, because I regularly drop into and out of various different languages and patois, because sometimes when you want to say, a comedian makes fun of this. If you're talking about, we're going to go over and we're going to have some a salad and some rolls and some manicotti, and you're like, people really do suddenly become broad Italian when they say Italian food, because that's funny, because it's not, you're not making fun of them, and you're not like trying to, if you will, take their place. It's more like that's just something that you do. If I'm trying to speak Cajun, I give them the full emerald. You know what I mean? I don't think I'm, and we've talked about this before, a little bit of what you're doing is, if it's like, can you understand the motivation behind it? If it's meant to be sarcastic and insulting and nasty, you can tell that. If it's meant to be loving and appreciative and funny, you can tell that too. And maybe there are some people that are really good at walking that line of, I'm going to be a bad guy and I'm going to say it I'm going to say bad things, but I'm going to make it so that it isn't an obvious insult, it's ambiguous. It's funny, we're watching The Rookie, and there's a character that is a very prejudiced policeman, but he's learned to couch all that prejudice in the ways of law enforcement, the ways of
who just happens to be Superman.
Yes, exactly that. You're right, Brandon Routh. And so I found that a very effective, like everything that comes out of this guy's mouth, I hate him, but he's so cunning in terms of that's not going to get him fired. That's not going to get him brought up on charges until something that it isn't just a matter of the wink things he's saying, but he acts out wrongly. And then there's proof, if you will.
Right. So that's what, second season, maybe third season, right?
I think third season, exactly.
Yeah. And you're in the middle of it.
Right,
I'm not going to give anything away.
Episode 5 or something. We have all kinds of good stuff to go. This is, I think I might have mentioned this. Usually it like is happy to show you the next episode and just go along. For whatever reason, at some point, we were in like season 2, and it jumped forward to the first episode of like season 7, I think. And so at first when it was going on, I was like, okay, that's not the same Watch Commander or whatever like that. So something's wrong here. But then they also then have Rosalind Dyer, who I think is the female serial killer. And so I guess she's going to figure in. I don't know how much of a repeating character she's going to be, but she's still around for season 7. And she and John must have had multiple interactions, because she's got the little like loving you, John type thing where that's boy, that alligator sure loves you. So that little teleport into the future is very much like what Marvel would do purposefully. They'll show you the teaser and then bring you back to this timeline and wait until you. So I was very amused by that mistake. Actually gave us some insight into maybe what we're going to see happening in the next 5 seasons.
You've got so much good stuff coming up.
Very cool. We usually watch a couple episodes a night. We're not binging it where it's going to be used up too soon, but almost always there's enough in one episode that we're like, we just got to see what happens with her baby. You know what I mean? There's always little things that lead you to the next one. They're very smart about that.
When his brother shows up, it's great.
Wait, what? I do. Yeah, the ne'er-do brother.
Yes.
Okay, the half brother. Yeah,
Tudyk shows up a couple times, starts playing not a recurring role, but a few times. Okay. And the things you mentioned with Rosalind, this is one of those shows that starts off with one premise. Is okay, he's a rookie. Year 7, he's no longer a rookie. So they really realized that, and they've developed the other characters and the other storylines with those characters, and you care about that just as much as you do anything else. So they've been able to keep it fresh and alive because they didn't just stay focused on that one aspect. It's grown, and they better not cancel the show yet. There's still so much good stuff to come from it.
That's right. I love ensemble casts like that. Castle was a really good example of that it wasn't only ever about him. It was always about everybody in the police house, and that some characters come in and go out, and there's recurring
his mother, his daughter,
like mother and the daughter. Exactly. So they just had his new mother in The Rookie show up, and she's not just irritating, she's really psychotic. You know what I mean? So
and skeezy.
But what's also funny is I wonder how much like does Nathan Fillion have things in his background that each of those is a variation on his mom, that she was always doing get rich quick schemes, or that she was always like so egotistical and narcissistic that she didn't have much concern for others. And what's it like to grow up with that? How did he get to be a relatively good guy with that constant influence of her being so skeezy? Exactly. So there's more to learn there. I don't know when she's going to reappear, but they just had the first big where she comes into his place and takes over badly and does the CBD scam and stuff like that. And they just parted with him saying, I need you to not be in my life. And how do you say that to your mom after you've had 500 bad things done by her? It's just self-defense, right? It's like I have friends that can't be around their mom because their mom pushes their buttons. They're the ones that put those buttons there in the first place. And out of self-defense, out of just like retaining your sanity, being an adult, you don't play the role of daughter to mom anymore. You play that you're your own person. Oh, anyway.
So before we roll out of here, we'll keep on the superhero vein, and you're way more ahead than I am. So Doom Patrol has been the other bigger series that we've been watching, and I'm way behind. I'm only on like season 2.
It's got lots of good elements, but I will say this: I love Grant Morrison's run, and much of how they started off this series is based on his characteristics, the characters that appeared in his run of the Doom Patrol and stuff, but the more that they've abandoned his stuff, that they've made up their own, that they deviated, they're not as good a writer as Grant Morrison. They don't have that combination of macabre and surreal and heartfelt and all that kind of stuff. So there's good for what it is for TV. It's good. Each of the characters gets a resolution to what had been going on with them. But having said that, I just wish that they would have continued with a lot of what Grant Morrison did, because there's all kinds of plots that he had that could have been done better if they hewed more closely to what he had originally envisioned. Still very satisfying and still very heartbreaking. You know what I mean? That every character's resolution is not always good.
Yeah.
And yet it's definitely one of those shows that we don't care about whatever superhero conventions you think you know, much like the Doom Patrol always was. It's a gang of misfits and people cast out from society, and they just happen to have powers or bump into problems that they end up saving the world again and again, while the whole world says, yeah, why don't you save the world over there? Don't come near me. You know what I mean? It really a little X-Men-ish, where forever you're going to be, society doesn't like you, trust you, they'll have a big parade for you, and then they'll say, but you can't live in the neighborhood that just threw the parade. It really captures a lot of that, and I'll extrapolate to this. Smart people deal with that all the time. I need your capabilities, but I'm scared. I'm scared that you really can think that much faster and deeper, and that I can't keep up, and that I can't control you. And for a lot of people, that's all that matters. You know what I mean? So
Right.
It's a little weird, that sense of being, I don't know, forever out of place. I've learned to not always be the smart guy, because people don't always appreciate it. They're actually not liking of it. I'll close with, we went to the Cleveland Comedy Festival this weekend. It ran 4 days, but we only had stuff to do on one day. One of them was making fun of art. And it really was a great premise. So they had a master of ceremonies and then 3 comedians, and they rotated people in and out of this. And they looked at great works of art or not so great works of art and commented on them. Kind of the same thing that when you walk through an art gallery and you can really appreciate it, or you can really say, that's a fraud. That's just a big block of blue. What the hell's going on there? They were really good at incisive, funny comments about that. But what I made the mistake of doing was I knew a little bit about it too. And sometimes I would say things that were also witty, but that showed that I really understood what the background of that painting, or that why is there, they had a painting of Perseus killing Medusa, but there's more than one snake-haired Gorgon there. And I had to stop myself from saying that's because Medusa was one of 3 sisters, because it would have been more people in the crowd going, this, they were very kind up on stage with saying, maybe you should be up here on the panel. No, you guys are doing great. I'm just throwing things in where I hope that it will help. But you know what? Sometimes being smart is showing off. Sometimes being smart is disruptive and taking you off the track. And because mine was only informational, it wasn't witty, I just kept it to myself. Let's keep being witty. Let's keep making fun. You know what I mean? I'm aware that, like other smart people, once in a while you don't have that sense in time, and you say something that has everybody going, all right, it's weird that he really knows all the details and remembers that much and all that kind of stuff. And I've had to learn to do that in the course of my young life. I learned early on.
Throttle yourself.
Put that big light under a bushel basket once in a while, because not everybody likes to know that you can spell psychedelic when you're like 5.
Right.
It's just, I've learned that early on. Oh, there. That's a sad little note of once in a while, you just have to blend in instead of standing out. It's much healthier for you.
Based on the time of year it is, you know what the really big exciting thing with this time of year is? That it's now time to watch the Guardians Christmas special again with Kevin Bacon, because I've been waiting for months to watch it again. I limit myself. I don't want to watch it when it's not Christmas time. It's Christmas time. Let's watch this 3 or 4 times again.
I totally agree. And I need to go rewatch Peacemaker, just because I want to see the opening titles where they do the little dance routine. That's just, and it was
Which Alan Tudyk is the one that came up with that.
Exactly. So I love that kind of stuff. And in fact, I don't know whether they're out yet. I think not. The next Doctor Who is the return of David Tennant, but not as the same Doctor, like a befuddled, maybe. I'll wait to see what happens.
Yeah.
And I'm intensely curious, and I'm really hoping that it works out. And I think also a couple other people returning from past episodes and stuff like that. I actually have been like rewatching Doctor Who from the first of the modern episodes, the Christopher Eccleston series. So somehow they all became available on Prime or Hulu or someplace.
I think they're on Max.
Maybe it's Max then. Thank you very much. And they bring back the Daleks. But they have introductions of all kinds of new stuff as well. And so I can also see why Eccleston really wasn't a great doctor. He really is like aggressive and dismissive and nastier than past doctors have been. And I could see why somehow the showrunner said, this really isn't keeping with the canon of the kindly old grandfather and the befuddled hobo. And do you know what I mean? There's been variations on him, but none of them were actively telling human beings what stupid apes they are and stuff like that. So I'm waiting to see, like right after this is where David Tennant kicks in, right? And then to Matt Smith. So I'm wanting to rewatch the David Tennants before the new David Tennant version shows up. I can compare and contrast more fully.
Right.
I love them. I just love the Doctor Who's. There's so much there. There's so much good stuff in there. So, and
if you like Doctor Who, you'll probably like Loki because it has that same feel, that time travel oddball goofy. And the other things I love, bringing back Loki a second, is if you ever play Fallout, this felt like Fallout. Everything looked like Fallout within there. And a lot of the story reminded me of Control, which is a video game by Remedy, who just came out with the Alan Wake series. So if you liked Loki, go watch Doctor Who and play Control by Remedy and Fallout, because all those all
continue in some ways. Exactly.
Well, they feel like that show a lot. And if you like those shows, check out Loki because it feels similar. If you liked, you may like this.
That's right. But it's funny. One of the places I have a real blind spot for pure video games. I've always played computer games, but I've never had an Xbox and a PlayStation, the NES, and all that kind of stuff. And so when they often have references, songs, characters, that kind of stuff, I'll see a whole bunch of cosplay. And so I can guess, because I've seen it a bunch of times, is that Argle Bargle or whatever? I really don't. And other people are like automatic because they've been immersed in those worlds and the scenery around them and the characters and the costumes and all that kind of stuff. I one day will have to catch up on that, or I'll just have to acknowledge that though I do relentless geekery, I got a blind spot a mile wide in terms of stuff.
The Remedy games, Alan Wake and Control, I think are both on Steam. They're that type of game that works well with PC. And Fallout is definitely
grab them for $19 or something like that and get in.
I got Control, the Ultimate Edition, like 2 or 3 years ago for $11.
I love, it's funny, I love those kinds of bargains, but oftentimes they're like, I know nothing about this, and am I really gonna even spend $11 on? It's funny, I think that I like more dungeon crawls than shooters. You know what I mean? That like there's a certain style of game that I like, and I have not gotten enough experience to be materially better at. I can see that guy just around the edge of that big crate, and I'm going to pick him off because I'm such a sniper, that instead I'm like run into the room, spraying bullets everywhere, John wooing it up, and then you die. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. The new Mario game is out. It's called Wonder. It's on Switch, and it's got some really unique elements to it that changes that series up a bit. People are loving it. And Colin and Ethan had it and we're playing it. They're like, hey, you want to play with us? Okay. I've not played many Switch games. I don't know all the controls and I'm trying to figure it out. And this one's and this one's different in anyway. And they were laughing at me. How long have you said you played video games? And on and on. And I'm like, you know what? You two go grab your computers, put Doom on there, and we're going to deathmatch right now. I will play Doom against both of you. You two against me. I guarantee you will not win. Shut up.
You'll have your viscera out of your body. And I just saw that little meme that it was Death that comes along and says, so hey, maybe it's the devil actually. And now we have the competition where if you lose, I get your eternal soul. And if you win, then you get to be the king of hell. And would you like to play chess? And the kid goes, how about Mario Kart? And then of course they show him in the next scene being on the throne of hell. Right. So there really are different experiences and skill sets depending on what you've played in your life. And I'm sure that I'd be the fumbly guy that then if we went ahead and played Diablo, Civilization, things that I really am, all kinds of old like arcade video games. Me and Berserk, me and Moon Patrol, we're pretty intimately acquainted. You know what I mean?
And I mentioned like the Atari 2600 Space Invaders. I'm
Yes.
like, I can flip that thing without dying. And they're like, what do you mean flip? We know what it means because we lived in the day when there wasn't enough memory for all the numbers. That
Right.
doesn't happen now. So you have to explain that to them. They're like, oh, so why didn't you have the numbers? It's not impressive to them. It's seriously, it's impressive. Just trust me.
I think many's the time I've been to Replay FX in Pittsburgh, and now it seems to shuttered because COVID and it's not going to recover. But one of the joys was not just going there to play pinball as much as I did that. It was taking a break and going and finding the arcade games that I hadn't played in forever, like Make Tracks, like Moon Patrol, and seeing if I could still get my little name up on the top there. And then coming back where somebody had surpassed me, it's, oh yeah, get in there gunfighter mode and put my name back on the top.
It's funny you say that because I just recently in the last couple months pulled up Doom. I listened to John Romero's book out, his biography, and I'm like, okay, now I'm in the mood for Doom. So I pulled Doom back up, started at the beginning again, and I'm playing it. And I told my buddy Casey, I'm like, man, it just took me a couple minutes to thaw out a little bit, but I was just automatically doing all these moves and stuff without even thinking about it because it's so ingrained from 30 years ago.
When I discovered that Play-Doh still exists in emulation out there on the net, and you simulate a Play-Doh terminal, and there's any number of times that I went to my regular keyboard with, this is where you hit shift term, and it isn't available. So what's the equivalent? But my fingers had finger memory that they were going to do certain things. That's what you do next. Exactly that. So even just like signing on and stuff like that, hit the escape. Anyway, it was interesting to see it's still in there. Like you said, 30 years ago, I got out of school in 83 and it's 2023, 40 years later. I can still sit down to one of those terminals and just go, and just as if you go back in time. It's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah. So, all right, man.
Always a pleasure.
It was fun.
You know what we need to start doing? Because Thanksgiving is coming up, and then Black Friday, and then Cyber Monday. We might need to start making some gift recommendations for the holidays.
Absolutely.
You know, so what's our favorite geeky things of the year? And just that, it would be worth turning people on to, hey, they just had this first entry. I just got, so that my wife can give it to me, the Keith Emerson Variations box set, which is like a 20 CD career retrospective.
Nice.
And that's pretty cool. And I got it at a better price than what I thought I was going to pay. And the Rick Wakeman one is about to come out as well. And his is like a 30 CD. So if you're prog rock keyboard geek like I am, these really are not only, of course, the music, but like the book, the little libretto, if you will, of all the stuff that was going on and variations and origins of things. And that was like $300 coming out. But I'm hoping that the same thing will happen, that once the market has it, and that it's not only a limited edition, but there's a certain amount of, maybe I'll get myself a couple of really big Christmas gifts that Colleen can give to me, and we'll talk about those kinds of things. We can get for $11 the complete on Steam, or we can get for $150 the complete Keith Emerson. Is anybody still buying CDs? Apparently just me.
It's Alan.
Okay.
All right, man.
Take care, Stephen.
Later.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Well, we hope you enjoyed that episode of Relentless Geekery, and that you'll come back every week and listen and join us in our conversation about all the exciting things in the world of geeks and the fun that we have, whether it be music or the movies or comics or role-playing games or board games and video games. We talk about so much, and we love having everybody come with us. Please, if you did enjoy the show and you like listening to us each week, give us a review, give us some thumbs up or stars, because that helps other people discover us and helps the podcast grow. And we also are starting to add some geeky, unique t-shirts. If you go to our website, relentlessgeekery.com, you'll see we have a shop with some t-shirts in it. And these are some fun sayings, some fun designs we've had and talked about on the show. You can also get a Relentless Geekery t-shirt, and this would also help support the show, as there are some costs with hosting and the software that we use. So it'd be great if everyone checked that out also. But please, we hope you come back next week and give us a review, pass it off to your friends, let them know. Join us as we talk more about the wonderful world of geekdom. You have been listening to the Relentless Geekery Podcast. Come back next week and join Alan and Steven's conversation on geek topics of the week.